What is going on, all you Pokemon collecting maniacs out there? This is Ryan, the PikaPikaPapa, and it is hard for me to believe we have been doing this video series for almost a year. About a year ago is when I had this crazy idea of coming up with these Pokemon index funds. Now, I'm going to tell you right now, I am not a fund manager. I don't know how to create index funds. So really what it is it's just an aggregate of different sealed products or cards from a set or high-end cards that we're going to look at and really just track their performance over time, right? So I'm not actively buying and selling things in these index funds, but it is a ton of fun, and I will tell you right now, it has been fascinating to watch how this has moved, and I cannot wait to share with you some of the updates today because it is absolutely Looney Tunes, as I always say. So why did I come up with this idea? Well, there was a bunch of different things. First and foremost, we talk all the time about how booster boxes, elite trainer boxes, Pokemon Center exclusive elite trainer boxes, like if you want to invest for 5, 10, 15, 20 years, it's going to take a ton of space, right? So I was thinking, like, what if I could just have my collecting side here in the house, but then I could also pump money into an index fund in order to have exposure to those products without having to worry about physically storing them. And then, you know, we also understand it's hard to pick the winners, right? It's hard to understand which cards are going to perform great in the long run. So if I can spread that risk out a little bit, you know, that helps mitigate the downside and still gives me some good upside exposure. You know, the other thing too is I don't always want to go out and spend $20,000, $30,000 on a Pokemon card. Not only do I not want to do it, I can't afford to do it, but that doesn't mean I wouldn't like to have some exposure to those cards because I do believe in their long-time price appreciation. So if there was some kind of index fund that I could buy at $100, of $500 a share, whatever like that, and get exposure to it, I thought that would be really cool. And then something like me, you know, as I said, I live two different lives in the Pokemon space, right? I have my collecting life, which I enjoy with my kids and my wife. We open product, we have a ton of fun. We have slabs and we have some things we keep sealed, but it's a little less intense. Then I have the investing side, right? That's where I have my sealed cases of booster boxes, sealed cases of Pokemon Center exclusive ETBs. I got my higher end slabs. Like, there's two different lives for me. And I think that if I could have some type of index fund, I could pump the investing side into the index fund and I could just have my regular old collectibles here inside the house. So with all that being said, let's talk about these different lists that we're going to be looking at. And again, remember, this is almost 1 year of trend data, which is awesome. I can't wait. And the first one that's most interesting to me is we do a Sword and Shield alt art. So the biggest and the baddest 20 alt arts from the Sword and Shield era. And that is a price I cannot wait to show you guys how that's moved over the last year. The next one, you all wanted some more exposure to Japanese in this list. So I do Japanese booster boxes from 2021 and 2022 to see how they have moved over time. I also do this Charizard Ultimate list where we talk about some of the biggest and the baddest Charizard cards. I'm going to show you that on the next page. Spoiler alert, that one has done really, really well as of late. But then also, again, you wanted more Japanese, so I said, hey, listen, we got Charizard on the English side. Let's do Pikachu on the Japanese side. All those awesome poncho cards and all those awesome promo cards. So we have a Pikachu Japanese Ultimate promo list as well. Then also for sets, I did Lost Origin. I did Roaring Skies, another one I'm super excited to talk to you guys about. And then, of course, some sealed products. I did the Sword and Shield booster boxes as well. And I have the Pokemon Center Elite Trainer box list, which I am absolutely in love with. So listen, before I get into all the nits and, you know, the good things of this video, if this is the kind of stuff that gets you excited, if these are the kind of things that get your engine revving, hit that subscribe button. If you have questions or comments, drop them down below. And as always, if you like what you see, give us a thumbs up. Those three small things go a long way in helping my small channel out. I put a ton of work into this video. So if you like it, show me some love and do one of those three things or all of them and make me super duper happy. So with all of that out of the way, let's get into this. And as I said, I'm going to walk you through the Charizard Ultimate list right here because in my mind, these are the biggest and the baddest, but I didn't want to have the true biggest and baddest in there. So what these are the 15 highest value English Charizards according to Pokedata.io. And then, of course, I didn't want them to be raw cards because we're talking about long-term price appreciation. And I think when you're talking about that and you're talking about investments, they got to be graded, and they got to be graded by PSA. PSA is the biggest and the baddest in the biz, so that's what these are. But then I had to apply a couple rules. So listen, if a PSA 10 was over $10,000 in value, I went down to a PSA 9 because I didn't want a single card taking up too big of a piece of a pie here. And then the population of that card also had to be greater than 200 because I want to make sure that it has some liquidity. When you have cards that have sub 200 population, it is really hard to sell them, and a single sell can really change the course of a price for one of these cards. So I like that they have some more population than over 200. So when you look at this, this is where we started off almost a year ago. You see there's a lot of PSA 10s in there, a lot of PSA 9s. Most of these PSA 10 populations and PSA 9 populations are under 1,000, and some really strong prices right there. This whole list started off at a total of $57,100 on 5/22 of last year. Now, where are we at right now? Here it is, and we have seen this before. This list goes as that PSA 9 Charizard first edition holo goes, and what has happened recently, we had a big sale for that one. Now, the sale price wasn't exactly $23,499. It was a best offer accepted, so I don't know where it actually ended up, but I promise you this, it ended up way, way farther ahead of that $16,144 where it started. But that's not all. What is really exciting, too, is to see how some of these other Charizards have performed, right? Even the base set Shadowless card is up 28% from where we started, right? And then you got the Gold Star from Dragon Frontiers. That's up over 50% from when we started. And then Charizard Holo from the Expedition series, guess what? That's up at almost 15% too. But then guess what? We have seen some retraction in some of these cards too, which is why I love looking at it from an index fund perspective, right? You look at the Dark Charizard Holo from Team Rocket, guess what? That one's down 21%. The Charizard GX Secret from Burning Shadows is down 20%, and that Charizard Reverse Holo from Skyridge is down 23%. But guess what? Even though some of those cards are down 20+%, if you would have had this in a quote-unquote index fund, you would be up. Now, I have two different ways of looking at it, and I'll explain it now. That way you don't have to worry about it for the rest of the video. I have even dollar, which is where if you were to say you have 10 cards and the value of the index fund is $100, you would have $10 worth of each card, right? But if a card is worth $1,000 and you only have $10 of it, you have a very small exposure to it. Then on the right is an even percentage, where that's just you have an even percentage of each card. So if it's $100 for the index fund, you have 10 cards in it, you have 10% of each card. So that kind of levels the playing field. The even percentage is the one that I like a lot, but I started off with even dollars, so I thought that'd be an interesting way to look at it too. But even percentage is the one that I'm looking at. So this whole set from 522 till now is actually up 16.8%, which is really incredible. I think the Charizard Index is the single best way to understand, or at least have a finger on the pulse of how the overall collecting and investing market is doing. When Charizard does well, I think the hobby is strong, and I love seeing these really strong prices, and I love seeing the price growth in a lot of these cards. So I feel really good when I talk about this. Now, I had to go from Charizard to Pikachu. Now, I will say this. We pulled this in the very beginning of January, so all of this we have to take with a huge grain of salt, right? Because we haven't had enough time to let this marinate. We're talking about 3 months of data for this one versus 11 months of data for the Charizard. But what was interesting to me is it's pretty much stayed flat, right? It's barely down, negative 0.1%. We've seen some cards go up, right? That green Poncho Pikachu right there had a really, really strong sale recently, which popped the price back up. But you see a lot of negatives too, right? You see more negatives than you see positives. So I'm very excited to see where this list ends up 3 months from now, because I think that, I don't know, we're just going to have to see. The Japanese market, to me, I don't have a good finger on the pulse of what's going on, especially since most of these are ultra modern cards, right? Ultra modern Japanese cards got really, really hot. A lot of these promos got really, really hot. It's going to be interesting to see if they can hold their water and continue the momentum. 3 months from now, we'll look back, and I think it's going to be awesome to see where they're at, okay? So then I promised you the top 20 Sword and Shield alt arts. Now remember, this was from last year, but when you think about it, what is fascinating to me, as much as we all love Sword and Shield, as much as for the last year we've been talking about, hey, the window of opportunity for Sword and Shield is closing, like the booster boxes are going to go crazy in price, like Scarlet and Violet, we're into year 2, like, oh my gosh, Sword and Shield. But guess what? This whole index fund is actually down 9%. Look at all those negative numbers from these awesome, awesome alt art cards from the Sword and Shield era. I mean, really, even the Moonbryon is down a little bit compared to where it was back then. Now, I pulled this data a couple days ago, so who knows? The Moonbryon, by the time you watch this, could be up in the 660 range, but we shall see. The Rayquaza's down 16%. I mean, the Blaziken's down 18%. You know, the Lugia from Silver Tempest is down 22%, although it's starting to show some strength. It's starting to come back up. I mean, you can go from top to bottom. And again, singles cards are very, very difficult. That's why we talked about doing this from an index fund perspective. So again, 3 months from now, as Sword and Shield, more sets start to go to sold out, I think it's going to be really interesting to see where this one ends up. But at least for right now, you're talking about being down 9% on the biggest and baddest cards from the Sword and Shield era in almost a year. Fascinating stuff. Now, the next one right here is the booster boxes from Sword and Shield. Again, what a perfect segue. The alt arts are down 9%, but the booster boxes are kicking butt and taking names up almost 21%. Now, we all know about the strength of Evolving Skies. It is knocking on the door of $700 a booster box, but guess what? Fusion Strike is not that far behind. It's up 58% in the same amount of time, and Chilling Reign has cooled just a little bit from that big pop that it got, but still still amazingly up 30% from when we did this almost a year ago. And then even Brilliant Stars is up. Again, I think Brilliant Stars is going to flip to sold out on the Pokemon Center here soon. I think Lost Origin is going to flip to sold out here on the Pokemon Center here soon. Like, it is just going to be incredible to watch this individual index just run and run and run and run. And I think we're going to get a lot of learnings from this. And then I know it's years and years down the road, but guess what? There's going to be some epic sets in Scarlet and Violet. Scarlet and Violet is eventually going to be in the exact same situation that Sword and Shield is right now. We'll have to see how the era is viewed. We'll have to see how loved it is and what the hobby is in that point. But it's going to be interesting to see how these two kind of follow suit further down the road. And we'll have a lot of data on how Sword and Shield performed, which will be cool to give us some insight further down the road. But as of right now, Sword and Shield booster boxes are just absolutely on fire. So the next one right here, I told you we were going to talk about 2022 and 2021 Japanese booster boxes, and I'm going to tell you right now, this is the biggest pain in the butt for me to pull. I literally have to go to eBay, look at sold listings, and make sure that these prices are right because I can't find a great data set to pull this in aggregate. So if anybody out there knows one, drop it in the comments down below. But guess what? The booster boxes from 2022 and 2021 on the Japanese side are absolutely crushing it. They are up 30%. Now, their gains have started to cool. Over the last couple months, they're starting to cool off a little bit. Last time we looked at this, they were up 30% too. So the gains are still there, but they're starting to slow down a little bit. Where we see some big gains is EV Heroes, right? That was a big one. Blue Sky Stream is another big one. I mean, you go up the list. Space Juggler had a big jump from where it was before, right? There's just all of these awesome sets, but it's going to be interesting. As I said with the Pikachu chase list, it is going to be interesting to see how this looks 3 months from now because I do feel the market just starting to cool off a little bit. It's okay. It's not a big deal. There's still epic cards. It's still absolutely amazing to collect Japanese stuff, but it's just going to be interesting to see how this performs over the next couple months. But I'll tell you right now, over the first year, it is hard to beat up 30%. Absolutely killing the game here. Now, the next ones we're going to talk about right here is the Pokemon Center exclusive Elite Trainer boxes, and this is the only list that I do actively update. So as the new Pokemon Center exclusive ETBs come out, I go ahead and add them to the list, and you'll see that I have Paldean Fates up there. I haven't added the most recent one yet, simply because the market price is still settling a little bit. But once that settles, it'll be on the next list. But what's interesting to me is you see that most of the gains from this one, it's only up 1.5% over the last year, and most of the gains are coming from the new era, right? So we've talked about how from Crown Zenith on, Pokemon Center exclusive ETBs truly are exclusive. I mean, you can still buy Fusion Strike Elite Trainer boxes on the Pokemon Center right now, which is crazy. But these new sets, they launch, they sell out, they maybe do 1 or 2 small restocks, but then at least up to this point, they just don't restock them. These are some products I am super bullish on for the long run, and I just think that the exclusivity is going to be a big part of their future price appreciation. We will see. Obviously, we have a long way to go. Obviously, their new exclusivity, quote unquote, if you will, is relatively new to the scene, but again, I just keep thinking back to the sports card space, right? They have retail boxes and they have hobby boxes, right? Like all the great products, basically, ultra premium collection boxes, booster bundles, like booster boxes nowadays, you can get them at local card shops. You can get them in Walmart and Target. I know booster boxes you can order online now from those same sources, right? You can get them at Best Buy. You can only get these at the Pokemon Center, and guess what? Not all of the world has access to the Pokemon Center. So when I think about this, some epic sets, some epic exclusivity, I think that's why I'm so bullish on these. And we're just gonna have to wait and see where it turns out, but I will tell you, these ultra modern ones are doing pretty darn good compared to their peers. So another fun thing to keep our finger on the pulse of. Now we're going to get into the final 2 slides, and these are sets, and for whatever reason, I was low-key obsessed with Lost Origin when I did this a year ago, so I said, I'm going to look at the top 20 cards from the Lost Origin set, and we're going to, kind of track them over time, which is what this video is all about. Now, I will say this, we did say that a year ago, Lost Origin was still relatively new in the middle of the Pokemon Pop and Flop, but look, it is down 20%, okay? So if you had bought all of these were the top 20 cards in the Lost Origin set on 5/22 of last year. If you had bought all of them and just sat on them, you would be down 20%. Now remember, earlier on in the video, I talked about how things can shuffle. I thought this is a great example of showing how the top 20 can shuffle over time. This is an ultra modern set, right? And we're talking about a span of just less than a year. And on the far right, you see the new rankings. Card 1 and 2 have remained the same, but guess what? 3 has become number 4, 4 has become number 3, right? Like the number 5 card dropped to number 8, the 6 is still in the same spot. Like, it is just fascinating to see all of these cards shuffle over time. And I thought this Galarian Parasurfer right here was a interesting one to talk about because guess what? It has dropped 58%, right? This was a big chase card. This was a top 5 chase card going for almost $35, and now you can pick it up for about $15. So when we talk about cards going through the Pokemon pop and flop, when we talk about pumping the brakes when singles come out and wait until they have some time to really start to flatten out, this is exactly what we're talking about. Now what's going to be fun is, hey, listen, the channel's not going anywhere. This series isn't going to go anywhere. So it'll be interesting to see if and when this starts to make a curve back up, but it certainly didn't happen this month. We'll see where we're at 3 months from now. And now the final one, I have made no secret about my obsession with Roaring Skies. I've talked about how I think the booster boxes are undervalued. I've talked about how I think the singles cards are undervalued. I obviously thought that a year ago, which is why I went ahead and started this. So when we talk about singles cards, guess what? I love this. This is actually up 14% from when we started doing this. Now look at some of the cards. Again, we talked about the top 3 shuffling a little bit, even though this is from the XY era, right? Like this is incredibly old stuff. We still over the last year have seen shuffling in the top 3 cards, right? Obviously the big full art Rayquaza there at the very top remains number 1 and is up 24%. But guess what? The M Rayquaza EX, that is actually down 8%, but the other full art non-M Rayquaza is up 34%, taking the number 2 spot. Again, you can see the new ranking list over there on the right and see how they have shuffled. Again, even though this set is incredibly old, it does not mean that singles cards can't shuffle around in their price, in their value, and where they rank. It is just fascinating to me. This is some of the coolest stuff. That Winona card has absolutely been crushing it. I have been low-key big fan of that card ever since I first did this because guess what? The trainers, even though trainers have seen some regression, this card has just found a way to continue winning, up 56% since when we first did this. So hey, listen, this is the end of this. I always say this, if you have something that you think would be cool to be indexed, let me know in the comments down below. Now, I have so much content here, I would have to take something out to add something in, so I'm not saying I can do it, but if you want me to do the work, I am happy to pick up the pen and paper and see what I can get done. If you enjoyed this and you haven't yet, hit that subscribe button. Questions or comments, drop them down below. And as always, if you like what you see, give us a big old thumbs up. I can't thank you enough for watching. I hope you have an epic one, and I'll talk to you soon. See you, everybody. Bye.